Hello, everybody, and welcome to FourWheelTech for May 11th, 2025. It's Season 2, Episode 19. I'm Mayor Watt. This is a time machine episode. That's why you saw that show ending when we're actually starting. I'm Mayor Watt. I run ohmtown.com. The sentient AI isn't available today, and so we're talking about 5 articles: low tire pressure, pioneer rallies, Rocky Bottom, Rocky Mountain, 2025 Alfa Romeo, I think it's Tonale Turbo, and then you're a Borescope, and then turbocharging is ridiculous, I guess. I don't know. Let's talk about it on the other side of this. All right, so this is ohmtown.com. This is where everything gets aggregated, but where you are going to get directed to is FourWheelTech, which is one of our many channels underneath ohmtown.com. Got 50 of them. We're going to talk about 5 articles that get aggregated that have to do with FourWheelTech. All right. So the first article is over in FourWheelTech. Can driving with low tire pressure actually hurt your transmission? It says for off-roading, low tire pressure has its perks. However, should you be worried if it's hurting more than just your gas mileage, like your transmission? This is the stuff that we've been told time and time again. Low tire pressure can mess up your transmission. So it rises and lowers with the air pressure, or air temperature, sorry. So tire pressure is notoriously finicky is what it says here. This article is by Nicholas Werner over at jalopnik.com. And this can be problematic if you're in a place that has high temperature swings. Something cold makes your tire pressure drop, and hot causes your tire pressure to rise. And if it swings back and forth, then sensors go all nuts. Anyway, generally speaking, it's a good idea to check your tire pressure regularly and keep your tires filled to their required PSI. For the sake of argument, let's say that someone does, surely not you, but someone else entirely hasn't filled up their tires in a while. Is it bad? Have you broken your car? Maybe some blah, blah, blah. The good news is that low tire pressure is unlikely to cause serious damage to an important and expensive component like the transmission or really any other part of the drivetrain. Most tires can go a fair bit under their recommended PSI without much degradation in performance or safety. That said, if you've got a flat tire like that, you shouldn't be driving it. You should pull over as safely as possible and replace it with your either a run flat so that you can, or a temporary tire. So your spare in the trunk, even the little tiny one. So in extreme cases, you might have a flat tire where it's completely uninflated. That adds some additional risks, such as driving on the rim, which damages both it and the tire. So you'll have to replace that tire if you ride around on the rim. It'll also unbalance the car. It puts strain on components like the suspension. As anyone who's ever driven on a flat will know, it's hard to steer sometimes, depending on how bad everything is. Basically, your car becomes a little less grippy. In a predictable manner. It actually is more so grippy because all of that tread is touching the ground. It just happens to not be squarely supported by air. At any rate, no, it's not really going to do that much. At a basic level, lowering the pressure of the tire will make it sag, increasing the total contact area of the surface, but it can actually cause it to bulge in the middle, meaning uneven wear. And then when you inflate it, it's sitting on the traction side, but the side walls won't, not the side walls, but the edges, the shoulders of your tire will be at a different level of traction. So it can throw off some things if it's severe. So that means the engine's going to have to work harder to push that extra rubber, which at a minimum will tank your fuel economy. That harder work also stresses components more and increases heat, although this probably won't cause any real damage. So just don't drive regularly like that. Even then, I don't know of anybody that's actually, unless it's way flat, you're doing more damage to the tire and the rim than anything else. Anyway, let's keep going. This next article is over in FourWheelTech as well. Drive your classic car the way it was meant to be driven at Pioneer Rally's Rocky Mountain Vintage 2025. If there's one thing that the article writers over at Jalopnik will always approve, it's driving classic cars rather than keeping them locked up in garages or garages. This article by Zach Lisabeth over at jalopnik.com put this article together. The Pioneer Rally Company's goal is to bring European-style vintage car rallies to America, and if that sounds like something you've been looking for, you're going to want to head off to Rocky Mountain Vintage 2025 on September 7th through the 12th. Registration is open now for the 5-night, 4-day rally, which begins and ends in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The adventure involves more than 1,000 miles of driving through some of the most gorgeous locations in the Rockies. The Rocky Mountain Vintage takes you across the Southern Rockies into San Luis Valley, and through the towering sandstones of Colorado's western slope. And the route makes its way into wine country, past picturesque small towns. So you'll get to see all kinds of older cars. Refreshingly, the Rocky Mountain Vintage 2025 Rally isn't for concourse condition classics that haven't seen a speck of dirt in decades. As part of the route, you'll cover nearly 200 miles of dirt and gravel roads. So if you don't want your car dirty, don't go. Anyway, pretty cool. Go and check it all out. The next article is over in FourWheelTech as well. 2025 Alfa Romeo Tonale Turbo review, an Italian charm that cuts both ways. They say that age comes with wisdom, so it should come as no surprise at the eve of Alfa Romeo's 115th anniversary, the company that originally made its name competing in endurance races like the Targa Florio and Mille Miglia, with flame-spitting sports cars, is currently looking to increase its market share with sensible, high-riding crossover. That's this. Lighter and cheaper than the PHEV, engaging to drive, some rough edges, though, it says. Bradley Iger over at ArsTechnica.com put the article together. The new base model comes with a double overhead cam 2-liter inline 4-cylinder engine producing 268 horsepower, so it's going to be screaming a little bit. Turbocharged mill is paired with a 9-speed automatic transmission and an all-wheel drive system that can send up to 50% of the available torque to the rear tires. While those numbers are down a bit compared to the Tonale hybrid, at 3,715 pounds, the 2-liter turbo is more than 400 pounds lighter than a PHEV model, probably giving it better gas mileage. Let's see. So the 2-liter turbo offers more precise handling as a result, right? I was going to say that, but while its mid-5-second sprint is similar to the hybrids despite the latter's power advantage. EPA fuel economy of 21 city, 29 highway, and 24 miles combined indicate that the 2-liter is thirstier, though. On a drive from LA to Palm Springs and back, which included a bit of canyon driving along the way, they saw an average of about 26 miles per gallon. So it says, taller drivers beware. Lengthy stints behind the wheel have a way of revealing them things about the car that isn't just by looking, or a short trip. It has to do with the limited range of adjustability offered by the steering column, which essentially forces you to make your seat adjustments based on the column's position rather than the other way around. You can get ambient lighting, big aluminum shift paddles for a $2,000 premium package, and a $1,000 Veloce package, maybe, or Veloce. I'm not sure how they pronounce that. I think it's the Velocity package, but respectively, help give the interior a premium vibe, while the 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster and 10.25-inch Uconnect 5 touchscreen infotainment system are standard equipment. So pretty cool. It has room for, honestly, this thing looks like, it looks, this whole genre looks like a Mazda. It all just looks like a Mazda to me. Maybe it sounds better, not as much road noise. Anyway, they talk more about this thing. Lots of pictures. The Tonale 2.0 liter biggest rival is arguably the Dodge Hornet GT, which offers a similar driving experience but starts at a base price that's roughly $6,000 lower. The premium you'll pay for the Tonale largely comes down to its Italian aesthetic and the sense of occasion that Alfa Romeo name imparts. Whatever. Anyway, they don't actually say the price. Yeah, there it is. Starting price of $36,500. or 48 as tested. The Tonale 2.0 Turbo is roughly $10,000 cheaper than its hybrid counterpart, and it also undercuts other European premium compact crossovers. So that $37,000, this is basically a domestic with European blood. Huh. Not bad at all. I mean, it looks nice. Let's go on. The next article is over in FourWheelTech as well. Why you should have a Borescope even if you're not an expert mechanic. I'm just going to jump straight on over to the source. A Borescope is so that you can look inside the cylinders to see if there is any damage or anywhere, really. I've got one that's really long that I can run into vents to see if wasps have made a nest inside the mayoral mansion's air intakes or exhausts, mind you, because wasps don't give a shit about your exhausts. They think that anything out is an innie and anything in is an outie. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, it's not for just professionals. You can get these things relatively inexpensively. They have a little screen built onto them usually. You can run it down sink drains like they're describing here in the picture here. They also mention AC ducts. It says Borescope. Worried about mold growing deep inside your AC ducts? Peek inside with a Borescope. Drop it down a pipe. Run it behind a wall if you want to see if there's anything back there. You hear a strange sound, you can drill a little hole, stick that thing down there, and you can actually control it by bending it little bits and working its way in there. I'd love one that's truly controllable, but that's not how they really work. So best of all, if you assumed Borescope was a financial setback, it's not. You can get a cheap one for about $50. So this is a great lead that they talk about. You can't see into something, but you are visiting the Great Pyramid. They used a Borescope to find a little void behind one of the chevrons inside the one of the pyramids. Pretty cool, huh? Anyway, our last article is over in FourWheelTech. Turbocharging a carburetor isn't as ridiculous as it sounds. Though it's a tricky process, the idea of turbocharging a carbureted engine isn't impossible. You only need to add a few modifications. Basically, get rid of your air exhaust, put it in a different place. So if you're a proud owner of a classic or specialty car, no doubt you've had a mental debate between retaining an old school carburetor or modernizing with fuel injection. Richard Sachek put the article together over at Jalopnik. So turbocharging is a little different. With electronic fuel injection, there's extra wiring to contend with and potentially modifications required for the fuel system. For example, some EFI systems require a second fuel line for returning unused gasoline back to the tank. However, you'll be rewarded with improved performance and fuel economy. That all sounds attractive, but the great equalizer between the two fuel delivery methods is budget. During the late 1970s and early 80s, several major American automakers combined turbocharging with carburetors, so it's definitely a thing. There you go. Surprisingly, carburetors can have large openings for boost to leak out, which is where the choke linkage passes through the body of the carb. These openings can be filled with a gasoline-resistant epoxy, and speaking of the choke, you'll also need to remove the choke horn if equipped by milling or grinding on a typical Holley carburetor. That's the rectangular tent-like structure atop the carb that prevent the turbo plumbing from fitting correctly. So this article goes on to describe basically several years ago, the staff at Hot Rod Magazine built a killer blow-through carb rated for up to 600 horsepower with just $48 worth of new parts. There's also a saying that a task can be accomplished fast, cheap, and good. Pick two. With some elbow grease hanging onto your old carb in boost applications, just might check the cheap and good boxes. So yeah, if you want to modify your car, go for it. Anyway, it's not as ridiculous as it sounds, suggests Richard Sachek over at jalopnik.com. But that's it. I have got to get out of here. I have mayoral duties between now and our next show and a whole lot of work to do. So I will see you in a little bit. Bye-bye.